Hello, and welcome to BB Outdoors. This episode's going to be actually a week 9 and a week 10. Haven't been able to hunt or really do much of anything for week 10. Got overtime, things happen, family, kids. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a highlight of week 9 and just rolled into week 10 too. So for week 9, it was actually Michigan's muzzleloader season for zone 1 and 2. And then for zone 3, which I'm in, it was basically a second rifle season, meaning that we could use our 450s from November 15th basically to the end of the year, but for that week period we can still shoot a buck with our 450. Now zone 1 and zone 2, they still have to use a muzzleloader, but being able to use the 450 with an abundance of deer, kind of really wanted to cash in on that. So what I did was I ended up getting in my truck, went for a drive, headed over to the west-hand side of the state over to my buddy Alex's, and was going to go hunt some of his ground. He was gracious enough to invite me over to be able to go over there and hunt a couple hundred acres. And there was a lot of different properties I could hunt. I mean, in a 4-day span, I probably didn't sit the same tree once, and it was just a phenomenal time. Got to get a little farming in, but we'll get into that. So I got there the first night. It was Tuesday night. Max, my oldest, started school on Monday, so I wanted to be there for that. So Tuesday night I ended up getting over there, started to hunt actually in this giant cornfield. I mean, it's a big cornfield. It's got a little patch of woods in the center, and it goes back to another cornfield with a little bit more woods onto it. It's, I don't know, like 500 acres of still standing corn. So there's a lot of deer. There's not a lot of woods, and I just wanted to have a ball with it. So here's the first clip. Alex uses this trail to get from one field to another. So as I'm trying to walk up here and get to the trees up here on the left-hand side, just inside that pathway there, I look over to my right and I end up seeing a couple deer here. So when I finally got to the tree I wanted to be sitting at, I looked over to my left and there was 4 deer coming in. Now the wind was going great. It was blowing right to left, but unfortunately I had to make a game plan of whether I was going to go back up to where I just walked, or whether I was going to sit right there. This field is actually on the neighbors. I crawled up to where I just was previously, hoping that I could kind of meet them or cut them off a little bit, but they ended up catching my wind and started to blow. Day 2 started off slow in the morning. With only seeing 2 little bucks, I decided to start stalking the corn.
Oh, it's a nice buck.
After the morning sit, it was time to get some farming done.
Alright, Alex got word that there's a shooter buck in one of his fields. They're taking down the corn on it right now. So I got pumped with a little over an hour left. I got a doe in front of me at about 200. But we'll see if anybody comes closer.
With no deer coming into the food plot until after legal shooting light, we went back to farming. Again, after my morning hunt, I decided to stalk the corn. What I learned was if you stayed about 3-4 rows in on the head rows, the deer actually would not see you. So these deer wouldn't fully bed down till about noon, and while stalking the corn, I ended up finding about 8 or 9 of them sitting inside the woods here. So what I'm trying to do now is just pick out what the difference is between the does and the bucks. A couple of the bucks are little spikes, a couple of them are, decent little 6 points, 8 points, stuff like that, but I was mostly after the does. Well, we got doe 1 hanging. So this is the one I shot right off the bat. The one I messed up on the camera arm, but I'm really incredibly happy with this one. Pretty good size to her, but definitely some more meat in the freezer. This gives me deer 3, and I got deer 4 right out here. It's a little bit smaller, but that's the one I end up shooting with the head strap mount. I'll go out here in a second, but I know they always can't be giants, and I'm as happy as can be right now, just being able to get meat on the table, and we're up to 4 this year. So hopefully gonna try to get a couple a little bit more, but we'll see what happens. I still got tomorrow over here with Alex, and after that I'm gonna be heading over back home, get these deer cut up, and hopefully get 1 or 2 more down before heading to the UP. So I'll show you guys this one. This one's definitely a little bit smaller, but I don't know, I'm happy. 2 deer on the ground, and I'm just happy to be able to get some meat in the freezer, like I said. So she's tagged, but all good, all good. So hopefully tomorrow we can get a couple more down and head back home. Well, it's December the 8th. I'm actually getting out of here a little late. My last day to hunt Alex is it's Friday. It's supposed to rain all weekend, and I'm gonna have some deer to clean. Just coming out here, overlooking one of his food plots he's got. He got cornfield, food plot, woods, so pretty good spot. Been seeing a lot of doe activity in the morning and evenings, so hopefully we can get one on the ground and have even more meat. Alright, I got 2 deer about 50 yards off the road up here. Pretty windy right now, but I'm gonna take the bow, see what happens. Never done this before, so it'll be fun. So, as I just said, the deer bedded right off the road. Now, what I didn't know was that when I grabbed the bow, the wind was blowing south-north, and the deer were east, and I was coming in from the west. So the wind was good. I was coming in from the northwest. Wind was beautiful. That's the boys. But the wind was great. Well, before I could get to where those deer were bedded at, I seen 2 deer in the corn. Now, what sucks about it is that if I was in the center row, there was a fawn on the right-hand side bedded facing towards me, and then on the left-hand side row, on the other outside, was the doe bedded facing the other way. And that's what sucks about how they're bedded, is that the one's facing one way, one's the other. They're observing everything, and then, watching the wind too. So it's really hard to keep up with them. The other part is that when you are seeing them, you're either seeing chest or you're seeing butt. And it's really hard to be able to get up to that point with a bow, with a recurve nonetheless too, to have a good ethical shot. So what ended up happening on this hunt is I went up there, stalked up to them. Wind was blowing pretty hard at that point in time. I got to about 10 to 12 yards of them. I didn't want to go, to the north of them and come in, because that's the way her head was, facing the way she was bedded. So I decided to come up behind, from behind her. So I got to about 10 to 12 yards, and I was looking, verified she was right there. So I decided, I'm just going to draw back the bow. I'll step in, I'll probably have a lane, hopefully, and be able to fling an arrow, right? So she didn't like that. So when I drew back, I ended up taking a step back, and when I took a step back into her row, oh, it was like I might as well have just broke down a door and broke down a wall. She seen me, looked at me, got up, took off running. So never ended up getting a good shot on that deer, so never took the shot. So I doubled back around and go back to the original deer I was going after. I knew roundabouts exactly where they were, but I doubled back, went to where I figured they were. Well, they must have moved rows a little bit. I'm going to take a guess. Went back there, looked, figured they were going to be in, these set of rows. They weren't. Well, when I took a couple more steps, they were bedded at just the perfect, little dip elevation to where I couldn't see them where they were bedded at. I couldn't see them, a row or two out in thinner corn. And then when I finally stepped into that row, there was a big doe bedded facing directly towards me, and she seen me instantly. I was in about 20 yards, and the only thing I had was a bedded frontal. So I sat there hoping that, maybe she would stand up and, look around a little bit, or at least stand up and look at me and then kind of get the uneasy walk away. But no, she decided to stare at me for about 5 minutes and just take off running. So ended up jumping 2 sets of deer in a matter of about 10 minutes. But I mean, it was fun. Definitely a blast in the corn. But the next time I do it, I don't know if I'm going to take the bow. That, or hopefully it's going to be a buck, because the buck will be bedded alone. But it's going to end up being I'm taking the gun out, and just that way I can do that frontal shot when I need to. But I had an absolute blast with that. Got really close. I stalked right up there on top of those deer. So I was as happy as can be.
Well, it's last night. It's December the 8th. Seeing a lot more deer stalking than what I am sitting in the sand. I'm going to stalk a few spots, walk through the corn, and then after that I'm going to head over and sit over to the food plot for the last half hour. But, having fun going through the corn.
Well, while driving from spot to spot in order to stalk, I ended up driving past it was like a 1, maybe 2 acre top patch of woods that I got permission on, and that patch of woods had a couple deer standing in it. So I drove down the road, parked the truck, got everything out. Them deer weren't going to leave the woods anyways, but it was at least enough to where, I got the visual, I can stalk up onto them. With those deer, I had a nice quiet walk in, using another, tractor lane to get back there. Got to about 60 to 80. Had the deer standing there, had them looking at me, everything. But what sucks about that is that they seen me first, so they were standing there staring at me. But on top of that, too, along all of those fence rows and everything else like that, them patches of woods, that those edges get more sunlight, and if they're not maintained, there's a lot of brush, a lot of little trees and everything else that grows right on the edge of fields. So when I pulled up the gun in order to shoot at one, there's just a lot of tangle of trees and everything else going on. So got to 60 or 80, obviously well within range, and just too thick, too much brush. I wasn't going to take that shot, so ended up passing on a couple more deer that night. But after the end of that, I ended up sneaking up to the food plot, sat the last half hour, 45 minutes at the food plot, and never seen a deer come into the food plot. So that's how it goes. After that, I ended up going home. Still had obviously 2 deer to clean anyways, so successful trip. But that was my week 9 and 10 for you guys. I've been cleaning deer and getting ready for this next trip. I'm actually leaving to the UP in the morning, so about 4 or 5 hours now. I'm gonna get a couple hours of sleep after this, and I'm heading up to the UP for a late archery hunt. So I cannot wait. I'm absolutely ecstatic. So just remember, I've got this was the shed that we found in October. We got pictures of this buck. This is actually, it's the UP genetics, but it's this is actually 3.5-year-old. And then these are the ones I found 2 years ago. So I'm hunting this area. Hopefully there's somebody decent inside that bedding area, but I've got this area here and a couple other ones that I think that there should be some bucks bedded in. But if I can pinpoint them, then they should be huntable. They should be on their late season patterns from bedding to food. So they should definitely be huntable. And I can't wait. I'm excited. So I'll see you next week on BB Outdoors.